and item 2. Item 2. Now, in this, generally, we are applying effect for body. So body is the root element. For body, we are defining so many options. So for body, we are configuring so many options. We'll see that. Yeah. So for body section, we need to configure some important options. So that means some styles and effects we need to configure. So when we are specifying the styles and effects for the body section, these need to be used for some other element. So such situation usually comes. We have to use for some other element. Then we don't need to write them completely. So we have to define the adapting options so that they can adapt those effects and use them. That's what we have to specify. So adapting is nothing but generally, suppose body is having color. So some red color. And the body is having border, 2 pixel solid. So and body is having some background. So background color, so light gray, something. This will apply to entire content. You can see it will apply to everything. So, but I don't want this ordered list to use that. Then what we can do is for ordered list, we can define color as we can use the options like unset. Unset is used to remove the effect. Unset is used for removing that effect. That means it is going to remove the effect. So that is unset. For ordered list, color will not be adapted. It will remove it. So that you can define by using this. You see, now when I go here, so we are making some changes and see, it has to remove that effect for that particular element. But actually, the body have the options and ordered list is inside the body. You can see it is affecting even the border and everything. For border and all, we haven't given any color because it is applying for the entire body. Even if I define for list item, because ordered list is a part of list item, you have options like reset. So unset, and we have options like initial, and we have option like inherit. Initial means before this color is applied, what was the color? That color will be used. That is what we call initial. So that means now list items will not use the body color. It will use the initial color. So that means it will work with that initial color. This is initial. That means before the color changed, which color was there? We want to apply that. Then we can write initial. So instead of writing like some black or something, we can use this technique. This is very helpful later when you are applying multiple effects. There is another technique. Actually, there is another technique. The another technique is nothing but we call that as means reusability and all. We have a concept called SAS and less. Later you will learn about SAS and less. What is SAS? What is less? Later you will learn about that. So by using that SAS and less, you can configure. So reusability, that means without writing them, we can use them. So inheritance will have three important options. One is inherit. We have inherit. So we have initial, and we have unset. We also have revert earlier. We don't use that anymore. It's no longer available. We can use this. Yeah. So what is the purpose of this and how these are going to work? We will see. So what is meant by inherit? Inherit means it is going to adopt the parent effects. So adopt parent effects. That is inherit. What is initial? Initial means it defines the default style. The default style, whatever default is there. Unset is removes effect and adopts default. That means finally it will get default one. So generally we have to define that. So for example, some contents are present. So we need to define the effects. So in the body section, let's see. I will keep some content here. That means parent-child hierarchy we will give. Simple. Here I'm writing. So P, that is para 1. And we have another class, paragraph. This is para 2. And it is having a class called effects. Now in the style I am applying. For paragraph, that means for every paragraph, so the background color will be red. Okay. For every paragraph, color will be white. For every paragraph, border will be 2 pixels, solid, black, like this. Now you can see that. So by default, all paragraphs have that. But for second paragraph, I want to remove the border. I don't want border effects to apply. So then generally what we can do is dot effects. That is the class used for second paragraph. Here we will put border as initial. So, but important is you can see initial means before border was defined, what was? It is configuring it. You can also use the option unset. So unset is also same in appearance. Then many times people are confused. What is difference between initial and unset? Actually, unset is going to remove that effect. And after removing the effect, it sets to normal again, default. So without removing, you can get default. So when you are dynamically trying to add effects and remove effects, so better use unset to remove. So if you give initial on the existing effect, it will apply the initial effects. So then sometimes if there are many effects, all will be applied. So both looks the same, but both are not same. Initial means it will add the basic effects to the existing. In that basic effects, if border is not there, it will not be there. But unset means it will remove it. It will remove it. If you want to remove all, then what you can do is you can simply keep here all. You can write the word all and you can say unset, all unset. That means it will remove all of them. So when you are applying any effects and you want any specific, then you can simply use this. Suppose I am defining like border unset and background color I define as inherit. That means it is inheriting the background color, it should inherit, and border it should unset. So and color also I need to unset. So unset. All these you don't need to write separately. You can see that all you have to write. If I write all of them, then it will use. But background is not inheriting, because if you are defining multiple, then just use the option all. And if you say all are unset, then it will remove all the effects and define. Don't need to mention individual, right? And initial and default, both are not same. Initial and unset are not same. So unset is removing the effects. If you remove the effects, the original default will be used. But initial means adopting that and using it. By default, so if you don't configure this, then what will happen is by default it is inherit. It will inherit. By default, it inherits. If you want to change, then you have to use effects. So all effects or any specific effects, you have to just define as unset. That will be fine. So all or any specific also you can unset. So you can just put color as unset. That means the color is removed. Rest of all options are defined. So you are defining like some background color unset. That means the background color will be removed. Then I want color as initial. That means the color will be set to initial. So I want to remove the border. Then I will write so border as unset. Like this, we need to configure all of them. Individually, you can define them, or collectively you can configure them. By default, it will be inherit. By default, it will be inherit. You can change to unset, or you can change to initial. Inherit, unset, and initial. These are the three important options you need to understand. I hope everyone is clear, understood the difference. Initial means it will apply the default effects. Unset means it removes the effects and becomes default. And inherit means it adopts the parent effects. By default, it is inherit. Later in different examples also, we will implement that and we will see it. How to handle this inherits and the options. So we call this as CSS inheritance. Inherit, initial and unset. These are the options. Next, after understanding, now we need to all these. We need to learn various CSS effects now. In the CSS effects, how to apply different effects. First, generally, we learn CSS box model. CSS box model, usually developers call this box model, means how to arrange the content and how do we adjust the space around the content. Actually, box model contains margin, so padding, and border. These three comes under box model. Margin, right? Margin, padding, and border. So that is nothing but actually, suppose we have the page. Inside the page, we have some content. So inside the page, we have some content. Now in this content, so around this content, the space you want, the space around that content, that is called as padding. We call this space as padding. This is padding. And the space between the content and page, means between padding and page, we call this as margin. So margin is between that content, padding and the page. And after the padding, you will have border. So this is called border. After the padding, you have border. So this is border. So adjusting the contents, the configuration of the contents. So box model is all about arranging the margins, the padding, and the border. So how we can adjust that? For that, generally in CSS, we have the attributes, margin. We can separately give, actually margin will give all sides. All sides it will define. We call it as a shorthand actually. We call it as shorthand style. We can give separate margin. Margin left like margin right like margin top, and margin bottom. Margin bottom. These are the options you can define. These are actually all directions you can configure. You can write in one way. Suppose we have some content. So let's say we have some paragraph of information here. So when you have the paragraph information here, so you can see this is the paragraph. Let's put this paragraph there. So just we are having a paragraph there. So one paragraph of information is configured and defined here. Now generally when we are defining it, so P, for paragraph I given margin. Margin I said 20 pixel. All directions margin will be 20 pixel. All directions margin will be 20 pixel. So I will give text align as justify. It will give right side evenly. All sides it will be 20 pixels. But if you want any specific, so then you can define the margin in this way. You can write like margin left. Margin left has some 50 pixels. Then left margin will be 50 pixels. Right and top other margins are not adjusted. Other margins are not adjusted. So it will be only left. You can separately give. So margin right as some 50 pixels or 100 pixels. Right margin will be 100 pixels. You can define margin top as 20 pixel. It will adjust the top margin 20 pixels. So bottom, it will come when there is some other content below it. So we can define individually or you can give all. So that is the margin between that here. Now observe here, suppose if I apply a border for this border, 2 pixel border solid, I am defining border and you can see that the border is there. Margin is around the border, but I want the space around the content between border and content. Then that is called padding. We also have same padding left 20 pixel. Then space will adjust. So padding right also, suppose padding right also 20 pixels. I define 20 pixels. Right side also 20 pixels. And padding top we are defining. So padding top I configured as some 50 pixels. Top padding will be 50 pixels. We can define top and bottom. We are configuring that. We are defining the various and specifying here. So that means padding bottom is some 50 pixels. 50 pixels. It will give the bottom also. You can configure all directions. So margin box, padding box will be there. So margin, this is called box model. That means how much space you want between the content and border. How much space you want between the border and the page. So we can define by using margin and by using padding. Next important here, we need to define borders. How you can configure the border and define the border. Generally, border have so many options again. We are giving only one option here. So border have so many options. Actually, border is shorthand. Shorthand means all effects are applied with border. But border have separately border style. Border have separately border width. So border have separately like border color. So it has separately like border color. And again, several combinations are there. You have like border left style. You have like border right style. So you have like border top style. We have like border bottom style. Separately we can give bottom style like this. Similarly, border left width, border right width, border top width. Similarly, border top color, border left color. All together you can define as one or you can individually configure them. So generally, you can write like this. Suppose see, I want to apply border for that paragraph. And I'm writing here, so border style. Border style, I can give like double border. So that is double border. Okay. Or we have like dotted border. Or we have like dash border. Or we have like groove border. So that is not enough. You define the border style. So that is not enough. You need to define the thickness. That means we have to define border width. So 5 pixel. Then it will be in that size. And suppose I am defining, padding all directions as 10 pixels. So all directions padding will be 10 pixels. It will define like this. All directions padding will be 10 pixels. It is defined in this way. So we need to configure that. So we need to define that. So the padding, so the border, how to specify. You can define color, like I say, border color is equal to some red, and it will apply the border color like this. But you can individually separately configure. So you can write like this, like border left style, or you can use border left as shortcut. We can say as a double border and a red color and 3 pixels. That is border left style. So you can write border right, border right. So we have suppose some groove, and this is green, and some 4 pixel like this. You can see left and right borders are different now. You can see left and right borders are different. I will give little bit padding also for that. I will use padding as some 5 pixel padding, and it will give the 5 pixel padding. And we give 10 pixel padding. So 10 pixel like this. Now this is left and right border. So I will give text align justify. Okay, this is left and right border. Now what I want here is top border different, bottom border different. Then we can give as like border top double. So we have double and red color and 3 pixel. Similarly, border bottom. So that is groove and green and 4 pixel like this. Then you can see the combination of border will be like this. It will apply the border in this way. So you can use different combinations of border. So suppose, so top is some 8 pixels, left is 8 pixels, and the top is also 8 pixels. And you can see its size increases. How you want to display? Separate all the 4 sides different you can use. All together, if you want to apply, then just use border. You can configure. So that is generally how the borders are configured and defined. So you can use the border styles. So border is also having images. You can keep you can put an border image. So how you can put a border image? But for border image, we have to design the borders correctly. We have to design the border correctly. If you don't define the border correctly, then it will not work. So the border images, you have to design your own image. Simply, you cannot put any image as border. So because you are applying to border, so it should suit for border. You try to apply any other images, it will not work properly. For example, see here, I am designing something like this. So suppose let's create a simple design here. Let's create a simple design. So I am creating like this. So a simple design here. Let's add that simple design. Okay, and copy this here. So this is one option we are having, and in this, first we will design a border pattern. So first we will design a border pattern for that. So this is one, and let's take a duplicate and another one. Another duplicate is there like this. At the bottom, I will adjust this. Yeah, and it would fit this way. Okay, this is a general border style I am creating. You have to create reasonable border patterns and define them. And inside that, I am applying some color like So this is color applied. So border alternatively some colors are applied. And we are applying and using this color here. This is the border here. We are configuring the border, defining the border, configuring and defining the border. So now this, we will save this as a border image. We will save this small. We will save this as border, and we will keep in our location and C drive. Ours is an 4 p.m. application. Okay. And in that assets, we have this border PNG is there. So we need to apply that for this particular content. So border we want to apply. Border image we want to apply. And to apply the border images, so you cannot use border and border image, both of them. Actually, for border images, you need to define only one important image. Actually, for border image, we have some properties. The properties for border image, the properties that we have for image, like we have border image have source. Source is nothing but you have to mention the URL that you want to apply. So we have like border image as a repeat, border image as a repeat. You can define how to repeat. Yes. So we have border image source and we have border image repeat. That means in which direction border have to repeat. Actually, border repeat means we have like stretch, and we have like repeat like options. Stretch and repeat like options are defined. And we have the options like round, space, round, stretch. You can use them. Round, space, so and round, space combinations we can use. Repeat. And image width also. So border image have a width, how much width image you want. That's how we need to configure. Altogether, you can use simply as border image. So we also have a border image outset. Outset is nothing but how much distance from the content it should display. So you can use all together. You can simply write like border image also. You can configure URL. You can define how to repeat. You can specify the various options. Suppose now initially I'm defining here. So for paragraph, border is from /assets in that border.png. Now, usually you will not see any proper border here because you have to tell the size and how to repeat. Suppose the size I defined as 50, the size 50. Still, it is not there. 50 or 70 size is there. It's not there because we have to mention even how it should repeat. We need to configure and tell it. Which round repeat style actually. When I say round as repeat style, so that repeat style is not defined here. Why? Because see, border image can be applied only on border. So first you have to put a border, and on that border you have to put the image. But that border should not display. So it should be transparent. So what you have to do is we have to write border and keep this border as, so suppose 20 pixel, but color will be transparent so that border is not displayed, but on that border image will be applied. And you can see that the border image will be like this. It is going to apply the image in this way. We can change, suppose 50 pixels, 50 is the size. You can see the border will be like this. That means how much stretch it needs. You can configure that border in that. So we have to apply the border and keep it transparent. On the border, you have to apply the border image. Directly, you cannot configure the border image. You have to define the border and you have to specify. You also have options, not only round, you have like stretch. You have like stretch. Stretch will keep like this. It will stretch the border. You can also give like options like some space. By default, it is space. It will be like this. You can define according to your requirement. That you can do by using the borders. So while working with the designs, configuring and working with the designs, so border images you have to configure. Don't use any large images. Like suppose I said some shoe.jpg. It's a very big image and try to apply. You will not see that. Many times people come with this complaint, sir, border is not working. Because so a sensible thing you have to think, like where you are applying, for that image is good or not. Is it a large image? And if it is a large image, how it can display in a border? This thing you need to understand. So that's the reason. So your problem is image room. So that will be suitable.